Matt Whitaker, former U.S. Acting Attorney General.
This is such a great conversation about America, our future, what's going to save our republic.
We have a great football player. Matt Whitaker is here. Matt.
They tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed.
It's a touchdown! Whitaker.
Former acting U.S. Attorney General.
Under President Trump.
I'm going to be an unwavering supporter of law enforcement.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice with your host, Matt Whitaker.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice. I'm your host, Matt Whitaker. This week's guest is a great patriot and a great friend of mine, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Matt. We've shared a lot of time together over the last 7 years now that we've known each other on the Trump campaign, and then I don't think we've been on Fox together yet at the same time, but we make a lot of Fox appearances together. So.
Well, give it some time. I'm sure we'll get to do a panel or something.
We'll get there.
Well,
I think since we think alike, they never want two guys that think alike on the same panel. So,
Yeah, I mean, heaven forbid you have somebody that, wants the best for their country and wants the people to flourish. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Those are radical ideas, Dan.
Yes, radical ideas. We're radical just because we love America. We want to salute the flag. We want to protect life, the Second Amendment, keep business alive. That's radical these days. We give it all to God, and somehow we're radicals because we do that. And I know both of you are strong and believers in our faith and committed to our Lord and Savior. So, but that's radical today.
It's not, and we should not be ever afraid to say that.
No.
I think that is so important. Our founding fathers knew how important faith was. And it's just, I think oftentimes the left tries to push faith out of the public square. That is, I think, the wrong instinct. I think the right instinct is, we're a better country when there's more people of faith that are in leadership. It's just that simple.
Matt, it's interesting. I don't see a lot of the battles that we have in front of us today necessarily Republican and Democrat. I see darkness and light, good and evil. Now, both sides can claim good. But so far, the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, have been pretty much a standard that you can put your hand on and say, this is the good. Bible basic information before leaving Earth is how you could do BIBLE. And some people don't get that. But I think there's a lot of anger in the country. And some of that anger is maybe with people who don't have the same peace in their lives that maybe believers do. And I respect all faiths and religions. And for those who don't believe, I respect that as well. But just because we believe, those of us who are Christians, we shouldn't have to hide that under the basket. In fact, the Bible talks about that we shouldn't have to do that. And the Bible has said, we will be attacked for our beliefs. So I'd rather, someone said, Dan, well, you're running for office again. I just got elected, as you know, last year. This is my third term as lieutenant governor, 2 terms as senator. And they said, well, aren't you afraid when you talk about God, it could cost you votes? I said, I'd rather get kicked out of office than kicked out of heaven.
Yeah, isn't that true? Isn't that so
easy? Yeah.
It's a great frame. So Lieutenant Governor of Texas, it's often said that it's the most powerful lieutenant governor in the country. And so tell me why that is often said. What is it about the lieutenant governor of Texas that makes it maybe a little more powerful than the sort of just the number 2 in the line of succession?
Sure. So after the Civil War, at least this is what history tells us and has been kind of passed down, of why some say lieutenant governor is the most powerful office in Texas. I disagree with that, by the way. I believe that the governor and lieutenant governor, we have different roles, and that someone like Rick Perry, now Greg Abbott, very strong personalities as governor. And also something that's changed, because we had the first Republican governor back in the 80s was Bill Clements, and then George Bush came along, of course, before being president, but he had a Democrat speaker in the House and lieutenant governor. So it's only been since Rick Perry, it's only been since 2003, Republicans have run the state in terms of every statewide elected office and the majority in the House and Senate. So it's changed the role of the governor a little bit. But the history is that the Texans weren't really happy with the kind of the carpetbagging governors that the Union sent down here after the Civil War. So a lot of powers, not in the Constitution really, but in the rules that we create in the Senate, really led to that being the lieutenant governor is powerful. So there are only 7 states where the lieutenant governor does not run on the same ticket with the governor. Texas is one of those. So I run separately. I mean, my campaign was $26 million this year. That's a big campaign in Texas because it's a big state for media markets. And the governor probably spent, 3 times that. But so we run separately. And what makes this position different in Texas is the lieutenant governor of Texas, and I'm not talking about me personally, but the power of the office is because I appoint every chairman of every committee. I appoint every member of every committee. And the lieutenant governor alone decides which bills comes to the floor. So it's very much like a majority leader. It's the Chuck Schumer, it's the Mitch McConnell, in the various states who are listening to this podcast or watching, they most likely have a majority leader of the majority party to make those decisions. And so that's the role of the lieutenant governor. And that gives you a lot of clout. And of course, I have to have a great body, and I do. We have 31 senators in Texas. Each one represents just under 1 million people. So it's a few senators for a lot of people. And I have a great senator. I have 19 Republicans, 12 Democrats. And I always say, Matt, that the good things that we do, we have passed the most conservative bills in history ever out of the Texas Senate, and we continue to do so. It's the work of the senators. They're in the committees. They're on the floor with the debates. They get all the credit, and I give it to them. And if something goes wrong, it's on my shoulders. I just try to make sure nothing goes wrong.
Well, so, I mean, I'm not asking any insider information. I mean, this is a nationwide show, and so there'll for sure be Texans watching. But what are your legislative priorities? What are you going to bring to the Senate floor this year that you can talk about? And, if there's secret bills, I'm sure there's not. But like, what did you campaign on? What did you promise your fellow citizens that you would be the advocate and the leader on?
Well, and it's a great question, even though for people who don't live in Texas, because the truth is, as Texas goes, so goes the nation, particularly the other red states. When we pass a bill, other states will follow very often, no matter what it is. And even the federal government, when Donald Trump was president, he based some of his legislation on what Texas had done before he was ever in office. So it is important. I mean, it's just something like a textbook. We're so big when we order textbooks, they're not going to make a textbook for each different state. So, I mean, California, New York, maybe, and Texas, so the red states kind of follow. So it is important. The biggest thing, Matt, coming into this session is and there are big issues, and I'll hit those quickly. But the biggest thing is we have somewhere near a $50 billion surplus. I want to put that in perspective. I think the highest we've ever had is 6. And, that's, the entire budget of Oklahoma or New Mexico together is probably not more than 12 billion. So our surplus is 50. We have 29 million citizens. We're a nation state, 9th largest economy in the world, soon to pass Italy to be the 8th largest. I think they're ahead of us, and we'll catch them very quickly. But I was on Tucker Carlson, Matt, in early March during COVID of 2020. And I did this famous interview, turned out to be that, where I said, look, I'm a senior citizen, which I am. I have grandchildren, which I have 7 of them. I don't want to shut down the country because of COVID. And in those days, remember, it was all about the seniors were at risk, and the seniors were at risk and still are at risk. And I urge all of them to be careful with their health. But we'll take care of ourselves. Don't sacrifice the country for the senior citizens. I want this country to be the free country that I grew up in for my children and their children. And so you can't imagine the threats that I received from all around the country. You can't imagine, the left said Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, wants to kill senior citizens for the economy. It was just awful. And he had me back. In fact, Tucker came on and said, I don't think I've ever had such a reaction from any guest up to that time. And he had me back 6 months later and a year later, and we were right.
Yeah.
And, Florida and Texas opened up soon, Matt. And so this $50 billion surplus, think about this, in large part is because we took off like a rocket ship because we had our kids back in school. We opened our businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Look at New York and California. People are fleeing from those states and they're in the hole. So it's clear what we did was right. So part of this session, Matt, is about the money, and we're going to return a lot of it to the taxpayers. It's their money. We're going to save a lot of it for the future. And that's $50 billion surplus. Plus we have another 20 billion or more in our rainy day fund. We are in better financial shape than almost all the states combined, and most of the countries on the planet. So it's, how we spend that money is critical. We're conservatives. We don't spend all the money. For our issues, there's no secret that we had Winter Storm Uri a few years ago, and our grid failed, and people died, and the economy was hit, and businesses suffered. So our number one issue is to be sure that we strengthen the grid with more natural gas power. All this Green New Deal BS is nothing but BS, Matt, and it proved it because our wind didn't work. The windmills were frozen. And so all these people that say, we're going to go green, you have to have dispatchable power you can depend on in every state. So that's the big issue. School choice will be a big issue. Tax relief, always a big issue. But that's we were the test case to show that the Green New Deal does not work.
Yeah.
It does not work.
And, I would go back to, sort of this idea of, the 50 plus the 20. And, the left, at least in my experience before, Republicans took over in Iowa, they always, anytime there was a surplus, they wanted to lock that spending in. They want to, invest, but they're not really investing. They're just, throwing money at their interest groups, mostly teachers and schools. And that's obviously an important function of state government. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't, invest in teachers and schools. What I'm saying is you just can't take your surplus, throw it all in, ongoing expenses, and then have that locked in. So when the economy, we go into a recession or some other unexpected event, that you've got to, all of a sudden you're cutting state government. And I think you made the most important point that I love it. It's music to my ear anytime I hear an elected official say that it's the people's money. And I know that you believe that because, first of all, you were more the people than you were ever an elected official. This is you didn't come to politics as a young man. No,
I was in my 50s.
Yeah,
and I'd like to say I'm still in my 50s, but I've been doing this a while now. And what is important, and look at California. A few years ago, they had a $50-some billion surplus, and then they had a $25 billion deficit. They spent all the money. And I'm a small business guy. I still own a radio station. I was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. For your Pennsylvania followers, I was in WNEP up there back in the 70s, and I was Al Roker and I were two young guys that got hired on WTTG in Washington D.C. back in the late 70s, and I came to Houston as a sportscaster. There's another Dan Patrick, but I'm about 10 years older than the other Dan, and then that's how I came to Houston. And then I bought a couple of radio stations, and a guy called one day by the name of Rush Limbaugh. No one had ever heard of him in 1988. He couldn't get on the air. My radio station had more cows than people listening to it. We were 40th out of 40, I think, in the rankings. I put this guy Rush on. What did I have to lose? And I put him on the air. And within 90 days, we were number one between 11 and 2 because he was saying the things that people were thinking that no one had. You have to, and I love the guy. We became best friends. You have to remember what a revolutionary show that was. Because in those days, talk radio was ask a doctor, ask the farmer, what's your favorite recipe? Where'd you go on your summer vacation? Don't talk about God. Don't talk about politics. Rush broke those barriers down. He is the Babe Ruth of AM radio. He is the Babe Ruth of Fox News. I mean, he started it all. I mean, Sean Hannity started filling in for him and became Sean Hannity. So that's my background, and I'm a business guy, and I just look at it as business, and so it is about managing the money. We did something, Matt, in Texas, and I've been trying to do this for a while. We finally got it passed. We passed a constitutional amendment that the people ratified easily that we cannot increase spending more than population and inflation. So out of this $50 billion surplus we have, we can only spend about $12 billion without raising the cap or busting the cap. We're not going to bust the cap. And see, that's the problem with the federal government. Every state, except I think Vermont, has a balanced budget. Our founders were beautiful in writing the Constitution, except two things: term limits and a balanced budget. And so in Washington, when they get extra money, they spend it on things they can't maintain. So that's why they borrow more to maintain them. In Texas, in the budget I've just introduced with Joan Huffman, my chair of finance, the budget we've introduced, Matt, our big dollars are like one-time investments. When we decide to give raises to teachers, when we decide to put more money into law enforcement, property tax cuts, we have to be sure we can maintain that. Because you can't go back and take it back. I mean, people, and I mean, if there's a terrible depression or whatever, we understand those things can happen and you have to cut. But we hope that doesn't happen under Biden. It could, not a depression, but we could have a deep recession. But my point is, you have to budget that money and spend it, Matt, so you can afford to keep doing certain things, which are programs. and on the bigger items. And people say, well, what are you going to do if you can only spend 12 with the other 38? Well, we'll save some of it, and we can do some constitutional things where we can spend some one-time dollars and do some one-time really good things. And that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and it's doing things that are in the best interest of your fellow citizens, so that they have a prosperous future. I mean, it's it's stuff that we just know in our it's woven into our DNA almost, but just it's amazing that the people on the left don't get this. But again, it's just different.
Well, I think there's a lack of business experience by a lot of Democrat candidates. And by the way, the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party that it used to be. It's been taken over by the left. And you know what? I blame the moderate Democrats. There aren't many left, but I blame the Democrats for letting the woke left take over their party. That's their problem. And we now have to take on the woke left. We're facing a different opponent now. And so they just don't have a lot of business people in their party. And some of the things they say are just ridiculous. Let me give you an example on EVs, electric vehicles. Biggest scam ever. If you take 4 electric vehicles and charge them at the same time at a station, a charging station out front of a 50,000 square foot department store, they use as much power in 20 minutes charging 4 vehicles as that whole 50,000 square foot department store does during that 20 minutes. And they talk about, electric vehicles are going to be great. Who's going to buy a car that when you bring it home overnight, you have to charge it for 7 hours? Or you go to the gas station, it takes you 20 minutes to get a semi charge. People don't want to be in the gas station these days for more than 5 minutes. It's not a good place to be. And so you're going to go to the gas station in 20 minutes to get a semi charge. And what if you're like the 20th car in line waiting? Because now you go in, you go out 20 minutes at a time per car. People aren't going to do it. And you're going to be driving around the country, and you're going to spend half your time looking where you can get a charge. I mean, renewables are fine. Helps clean the air, and all those things are fine, but they have overdone it, and electric vehicles are just a part of it. They'll be a part of American transportation, but they're not.
Choice, though.
This idea of it's going to be all electric vehicles in 25 or 50 years in California. What did they do the first day after he said that? Newsom said, "Don't plug in tomorrow. We don't have enough power." And where do they think the power comes from?
Yeah,
natural gas to create the electric. These people are goofy.
Yeah. So we only have a few more minutes here. This time goes so fast, and you're such a great guest. But what, I guess, a 2-part question, and there's, one is I'd like you just to talk a minute about kind of, Texas is clearly wildly successful. There's people emigrating here, both domestically and internationally. I know that's an issue, but that hopefully we get our handle on. What's been the key to Texas? Is it just lower taxes, less regulation, or is there more to it? Is it more like something about the people that are here and the can-do spirit? And then second, I want to hear just a little bit. I know you did this big bus tour right before you got reelected, and I really want to hear kind of what was on the people's mind as they were able to tell you what they thought you should do or what they appreciated about the role that you play. And I'd love to get a little flavor of your bus tour.
Okay, so let me do the second one first, and I'll finish on the first one. So real quick, I had a double-decker bus. It burned a lot of expensive Joe Biden diesel oil, gasoline, and we did 130 cities in 17 days. Texas is a big place. When you cross the border from Louisiana into Texas to New Mexico, it's over 700 miles. That's like the whole East Coast almost. Okay, it's a long way. So a lot of places to go. So we went all over rural Texas, and I just met the greatest people. It's a highlight of my life. Forget the politics of it. Great food everywhere. Great sites. I visited business. We did 8, 10, 12 stops a day, and they want the border secure. We're doing all we can, sending buses out. We normally spend $400 million a year on border security of our money. We're up to $2 billion plus a year. I mean, of our taxpayer money. We shouldn't have to do that. We just need a new president in 24. It was under control, as the last year of Trump, and it's a disaster. So the bus tour was wonderful. I loved it. You have to remember this, Matt, and I want to say this quick before we run out of time and answer your number one, is America is now a red country, but it's rural America. And rural Texas 20 years ago was Democrat. These were conservative Democrats. Obama ran them out, and now the woke's running the rest of them out. So we as a party in Texas will lose Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, but we will win 77% of the vote, as we did. Abbott and I again run separately. We both got 77% in rural Texas. If you look at Ohio, it's all red except Cleveland and Cincinnati. North Carolina, red except Raleigh and Charlotte. Pennsylvania, all red except Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Georgia, all red pretty much except Atlanta and a few other mid-sized cities. And so it's America's red, and so that's where we are, and we have to remember that. And so to your first question, what makes us unique? Everybody just loves Texas. You grow up watching Westerns. You think John Wayne made all of his movies in Texas. Most of them are in Monument Valley in Utah or Arizona, but some made in Texas. The Alamo, for example. So there's a part of Texas we all want to be a cowboy. Okay. Secondly, we don't have an income tax here. We have relatively low cost of housing compared to other states. It's gone up a little bit with inflation. We are the place you can still come and live the American dream. Businesses, we passed tort reform 20 years ago, one of the first things Rick Perry did. And so frivolous lawsuits are out of the way, and that attracts businesses. We're the fourth lowest cost of energy. So businesses are paying 35 cents a kilowatt in some states and 10 cents here. So they come here. So all of those things, but there's a mystique that we have, Matt. We all have, we've added 11 million people since 2020. 2000. So there were 18 million people in 2000. There's almost 30 million today, and we project 45 million by the year 2050 or more. And they're coming here for a lot of reasons, but we're the America that all America used to be. And that's what we're about. We love God. We love the flag. We love our police. We love our military. We're going to fight for this country. And when Texans travel the world, Matt, and someone says, "Where are you from?" We don't say America. We love America. We say Texas. Yeah. People are Texas, whether they used to watch Dallas in the 80s, or John Wayne, or just today Texas. They don't know where states like Delaware are. If you said I'm from Delaware, who would know? Oh, they do now, because they know where a Corvette is parked in a garage with a bunch of documents. But people don't know. You're from Montana. Where's that? Well, I should take that back. Yellowstone has changed that. But you get my point.
I know.
And
I understand.
all have, and I like to say that the millions of people who have come here, that no one, Matt, has ever moved to Texas since I moved here in '79. No one's ever moved to Texas. They arrive here, and Texas moves into them.
Love that.
And they get the cowboy hat, and they get the boots, and they learn it's rodeo, not rodeo. And we all get the DNA of Travis, Bowie, and Crockett. And damn it, we're going to fight for Texas. We're going to fight for the country, and we're going to fight for the world. The world needs a strong America, and a strong America must have a strong Texas, because we're the 9th largest economy in the world. We've got it all. And, they say in Texas, it's not bragging if it's fact. So we love America. We love Texas, and everyone's welcome. Just bring your Republican politics with you. Check the other ones at the door.
All right. Well, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thank you for being on Liberty and Justice with me. Everybody that watches this know that it premieres every Friday on CPAC Now, and it's distributed across all of the podcast networks, and everything I'm doing is on Whitaker.tv, including this interview, discussion, and all my TV appearances. And so, Dan, thank you for your time. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you again, my friend.
Hey, Matt, thank you. It's been an honor to be on. You're a true patriot, and we'll be working down the trail together.